My last video, I filmed it twice and then realized that I had some makeup under my eye. And you know what? Am I gonna refilm it again? No, no, I'm not. It's just gonna go into the universe. Take it or leave it. We've all been there and had. I just don't have time to refilm it again. I have to take the time that I have, and I don't even have as much time as I thought today because my son has a doctor's appointment. The title of this video is Can You Trust Pulitzer Prize Winning Books? This is a concept I've been working on for quite a while. Something a while ago, really a long time ago, I realized I was very interested in the nature of literary awards. You have your very prestigious Pulitzer Literary Awards, you have your Booker Prize Literary Awards, and then there's a whole plethora of other literary awards given out. And so I realized I really didn't know anything about literary awards. And so I wanted to start with Pulitzer books because, and we might do this again if this video is liked very much. We might do this again because I do think that's a really fascinating topic, and I don't think that I'm the only one who just casually reads, who isn't in publishing, who isn't an author that keeps up with these sorts of things. This can be an incredibly massive concept, and I think that everyone is familiar with some of the most popular literary awards. And it seems like if a book receives such a prestigious award, you kind of expect it to be the best. Like, you should be reading those books. Like, they're more important than other books somehow. At least that's how I kind of feel. Why are they so important? What is the criteria? What do these books got that other books don't? How are they chosen? Who decides what are the best books? And how do books get submitted? I think first of all, we have to keep in mind that any panel of judges cannot possibly read every single book. So the pool to choose from is likely probably more limited than you think. Also, I mentioned earlier that they likely are waiting for specific people to submit books. So I don't know what goes into that. Obviously, you have to look at the criteria and see, does your book match? But maybe people don't even care. Not every single book necessarily is being submitted that would fit the criteria. So I'm going to give you some of these facts, a little bit of background on the Pulitzer based off of my little bit of research that I did. Okay, look, I don't get paid and I don't have endless amounts of time to dedicate to all of this research. I just picked out and clipped some of the most interesting bits that I thought were the very most interesting. But then there is the fun part where we're going to talk about some of the books that have won a Pulitzer that I have read, some others that are on my shelf that I would like to read, and then my personal thoughts. So let's get into it. I do have kind of a fact sheet I will be reading from. So yeah, I know it's not the very most professional method. All right, the facts. I'm going to give you the shortest, most bullet pointed facts. And if you want the lengthy story version, you can obviously go Google that. And also, I have just kind of clipped a lot of the information from the web. I really don't have time to organize the information into like a organized essay format. From the Pulitzer.org website itself, Joseph Pulitzer is a Hungarian-born, was a journalist and a newspaper publisher. Known for his work in New York and St. Louis and how it reshaped newspaper and journalism by training journalists at the university level in the School for Journalism. In 1904, Joseph Pulitzer started the Pulitzer Prize establishment as an incentive to excellence, awarded by Columbia University and New York. Pulitzer specified 4 awards in journalism, 4 in books and drama, and 1 for education, and 5 traveling scholarships. There's a lot more information on the information of the prize amounts for scholarships, which I do believe has changed over time. Back when it first started, I think they awarded maybe like $500, and now it could be upwards of, I can't remember what the number was from most recent awards, but I think that's kind of interesting to see. But I think that it's interesting and important to know that if you win one of these prizes, there is a monetary value to be gained by winning. So that is the incentive to submit your book. It's not just like bragging rights. I guess I kind of didn't really think about it, but that kind of makes sense now. It makes more sense now. Joseph Pulitzer did understand the dynamic of the progression of his society, and so he made provisions for the board to make changes in the system of awards. He established an overseer advisory board that could make any changes at their discretion. In a post on Britannica website, the Encyclopedia Britannica website, and this was updated August of 2024, a series of annual prizes awarded by Columbia University, New York City, for outstanding public service and achievement in American journalism, letters, and music. I know this is a little bit repetitive. Fellowships are also awarded. The prizes, originally endowed with a gift of $500,000 from the newspaper magnate Joseph Pulitzer, are highly esteemed and have been awarded each May since 1917. The awards are made by Columbia University on the recommendation of the Pulitzer Prize Board, composed of judges appointed by the university. The prizes have varied in number and category over the years, but currently number 14 prizes in the field of journalism, 6 prizes in letters, and 1 prize in music. Okay, now the fun part. Okay, I have my list together, so I actually have in Notion, you probably can't see it at all. In Notion, I have a database where I made a note of a lot of the submissions, mostly for poetry, fiction, a couple from drama. Mostly fiction seems to be the ones I'm most interested in. So my list consists of books that I've either heard of the author or the book, but I haven't really looked into it that much. I just didn't know that maybe they had won this award. So I might look into reading them at some point in the future. They just sounded interesting to me. We're going to very briefly go over those. Then I have books that are Pulitzer Prize winners that are on my shelves. So obviously I really want to read them. I just haven't got around to it yet. And then I have books that are on this list that I have read, and it's not many, okay? I have 6. I read 6 of all the books on my list. Calculate. Okay, there are 42 books on the list. I obviously this started as an award for journalism, which I know nothing about. So there's no articles or journalism on this list. So kind of missing the point on this one, to be fair, to give it its credit where credit is due. Yeah. And then I might not list off the poetry. Anyways, let's just go ahead and get into this. All right, so first up are just books that have made it to the list, but I don't own them and I have not read them. That is Cat on the Hot Tin Roof by Tennessee Williams. That won for drama in 1955. Theodore Roosevelt, A Biography by Henry F. Pringle. This one for biography in 1932. I actually do have a biography of Theodore Roosevelt. It's massive. I intend to start slowly reading it, but it's not the one that won the Pulitzer, and that is this one, Wilderness Warrior, but this one's by Douglas Brinkley. But yeah, a couple summers ago, we went to the Theodore Roosevelt estate in Florida. Oh my God, if you ever get the opportunity, it is amazing. It's so inspiring. That's for another day. All right. A Fable by William Faulkner. Okay, William Faulkner is actually on here twice. We have A Fable by William Faulkner for fiction in 1955, and then again, The Reivers, A Reminiscence by William Faulkner for fiction in 1963. I don't have either of those 2 books. I have 3 other Faulkner books, though. The Optimist's Daughter by Eudora Welty, one for fiction in 1973. Funny enough, Eudora Welty made it to the list because I recognize her name from Gilmore Girls, because Rory was reading an essay collection by Eudora Welty, which she was studying for journalism. And I think, anyways, yeah, very interesting. The Color Purple by Alice Walker. This one for fiction in 1983. I am familiar with this story because I saw the movie. Such a good movie. But I do think it'd be worthwhile for me to read the book one day as well. The Shipping News by Annie. I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce her last name. This one for fiction in 1984. The Gilead by Marilyn Robinson. This one for fiction in 2005. I actually owned this book and I started reading it. I think that is why I picked it up, because I did know it was a Pulitzer winner, but it was very out of my comfort zone. And I was like, let me just give it a try because you never know. And I started reading it and I was like, there's no way. This is not the book for me. I don't know why I put it back on the list because I don't think I would go back to it. As I understand, it's very heavy on like faith and religion, and maybe not necessarily like religion, but just like having faith and the nature of faith. But I don't know. There's just so much other stuff that I'd rather read. Okay. March by Geraldine Brooks. This is a new to me author this year. I haven't read her yet. She has a book called Horse that keeps popping up in lists for my reading challenge, oddly enough. And she's from Kentucky, so I thought that was interesting. That's another kind of challenge on my list this year. But she won for fiction in 2006. Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. She won for fiction in 2023, so last year. And I know that this has been kind of popular. It's gaining traction on YouTube, and it was already on my list to read, so it sounded pretty interesting. Night Watch by Jane Ann Phillips, won for fiction in 2024. The reason this one's on here is because it literally just won. Sarah Teasdale, 1918. Edna St. Vincent Millay, I'm familiar with her name, 1923. Robert Frost is on here 4 times. 1924, 1931, 1937, and 1943. Anne Sexton, collected poems by Sylvia Plath. Mary Oliver, I know I've read a couple of collections by Mary Oliver. I really like them. Lois Gluck and Brandon Somm. Sorry, I'm skipping over the years. I'm trying to rush this a little bit because I don't think that actually this Brandon Somm made it to the list because he literally just won in 2004 for poetry. So I think that's interesting, like what's current, you know what I'm saying? So now going into the books that I actually own on my shelves, but I have not read them yet. The first one is The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton. This one for fiction in 1921. The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. This one for fiction in 1940. I plan to read this one and most likely East of Eden. I'm gonna try to read them both next year. I am excited to read this one because then my husband and I will have another Steinbeck to talk and compare notes on. 1940. A Confederacy of Dunces by John Kennedy Toole. This one in 1981. This is supposed to be hilarious, and I wanted to read this summer because it does take place in New Orleans, so that sounds really fun. Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. This one for fiction in 1986, and that is actually, see, it's got the little Pulitzer sticker on the cover, and that's actually, I was looking for a Western. This one's super popular for should read Western novels. Also, it got a Pulitzer, so I feel like that was why I chose to pick this book over other books. When it came to Westerns, that's not a genre that I feel comfortable with. I don't really know anything about. I've never really read Westerns. Beloved by Toni Morrison. This one for fiction in 1988. American Pastoral by Philip Roth. Unqualified greatness that is elegy for all our centuries, promises of prosperity, civic order, and domestic bliss. I apologize. I haven't really been telling you what these are about. When we get to the ones that I have actually read, we'll talk a little bit more about what they're actually about. Family. This woman's daughter who is like really sweet and beloved who suddenly has the potential to be like a terrorist. And I think there's something interesting about that because as a mom, like you do your best to raise your kids right and instill in them good core values and just being good humans and getting along in this world, and you can't always control what's actually going to happen in their lives, what kind of choices they'll ultimately make in their lives, for better or for worse. The Hours by Michael Cunningham, this one for fiction in 1999. I remember when this came out, I swear everybody was talking about it. My mom, my grandma, my sister, I feel like they were really big on this book. And then the movie came out. I remember they all went to like go see it immediately, which seemed really out of character for my mom, you know. The Hours is a story of three women. Clarissa, who is one of New York, who won New York Morning goes about planning a party to honor her beloved friend. Laura Brown, who in the 1950s Los Angeles suburb slowly begins to feel the constraints of a perfect family and home. And Virginia Woolf, oh, that's right. And Virginia Woolf, recuperating with her husband in a London suburb and beginning to write Miss Dalloway. By the end of the novel, the stories have intertwined and finally come together in the act of subtle and haunting grace, demonstrating Michael Cunningham's deep empathy for his characters, as well as an extraordinary resonance of his prose. I have not read any Virginia Woolf, and for whatever reason, I feel like I want to read some Virginia Woolf before I get into this book. Then we have Middlesex by Jeffrey Eugenides. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I can't actually tell you what this is about. Breathtaking story of Calliope. 3 generations of Greek-American Stephanides family who travel from a tiny village overlooking Mount Olympus in Asia Minor to Prohibition-era Detroit. Witnessing its glory days as a motor city and race riots in 1967 before they move out to the 3-line streets of suburban Grosse Pointe, Michigan. To understand why Calliope is not like other girls, she has to uncover a guilty family secret and the astonishing genetic history that turns Callie into Cal. Exhilarating reinvention of the American epic. Oh, is this like a trans story? That is kind of interesting, because I feel like at the time that this was written wasn't like it is today. You know what I'm saying? So that's interesting. Oh, and look, there's a note in here. Shayla, you are a rare, phenomenal human being. I am so proud of you. Miss Corbin, February 2006. Very cool. Okay. Middlesex. The Road by Cormac McCarthy. Post-apocalyptic novel destined to become his masterpiece. Father and son walk alone through the burned America. Nothing moves in a ravaged landscape save for the ash on the wind. It is cold enough to crack stones, and when the snow falls, it is gray. The sky is dark. Their destination is the coast. Although they don't know what, if anything, awaits them there, they have nothing. Just a pistol to defend themselves against the lawless bands that stalk the road, the clothes they are wearing, a cart of scavenged food, and each other. A journey of a future in which no hope remains, but in which the father and his son, each the other's world entire, are sustained by love. Awesome in the totality of its vision. Unflinching meditation of the worst and the best that we are capable of. Ultimate distractiveness, desperate tenacity and tenderness that keeps two people alive in the face of total devastation. The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde by Junot Diaz. Okay, this character just sounded so interesting and unique to me. Oscar is a sweet but disastrously overweight ghetto nerd. A New Jersey romantic who dreams of becoming the Dominican J.R.R. Tolkien, and most of all, of finding love. But Oscar may never get what he wants. Blame the Fuku, a curse that has haunted Oscar's family for generations, following them on their epic journey from Dominican Republic to the United States and back again. Yeah, nerds. Okay, that's all I had to say. Okay, this one, I'm nervous about this one. The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. Yeah, I did watch the movie, and I thought the movie was really good, but like, this book is so massively huge, and I heard time and time again that this is incredibly dry, boring. For all that happens in it, there are just too many freaking words in it, so I'm very incredibly nervous about this, but I do want to give it a try, because you just never know. Like, there's books that everyone loves and talks about so much that I can't stand. So, I can't always believe them when they say a book is bad either. Theo and his mom go to an art museum, and something happens, an accident happens, and it ends up killing his mom. He ends up taking a picture, a very valuable picture, the goldfinch. Oh, his dad abandons him, so he's on his own, and he goes and lives with people who are not his family. And then at some point he's on his own, and he's been hiding this picture. He figured out that the accident was due to people looking for this piece of artwork that's incredibly valuable, and so he's hiding it and keeping it, and these people, I guess, are looking for it, and they somehow track him down. I think that's what's happening. Glorious Dickensian novel that pulls together Miss Tartt's remarkable storytelling talents and the rapturous symphonic whole. I still think, despite everyone saying that this book is boring, I could probably still really enjoy it, because I feel like there are specific themes of this abandonment and loneliness that Theo feels while he's moving through adulthood, and how he holds on to this keepsake, that aspect of that, and that he also works in an antique shop. I think that's going to be really interesting to me. So I'm kind of hyping myself up for this again. I do think maybe it will end up working. I just will have to realize that it's going to be slow, and to expect that going into it. And sometimes just preparing yourself for that, and planning to not just sit down and try to read the whole thing in one sitting probably helps get through these bigger books. All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr, and I have read one other Doerr book before. It's a short story collection called this one, The Shell Collector. I read this one, and the way he writes, I fell in love with. The way he describes nature. In particular, I can't say I loved all the stories in this, because they were a lot about fishing, which I kind of felt just not up my alley as far as the subject matter I'm super interested in. But even within that, I did enjoy just the way he would explain nature and surroundings and stuff. But The Shell Collector is a phenomenal short story. I love it so much. It stuck with me so much. I've kind of been collecting other books by this author, and I ended up with All the Light We Cannot See. I didn't realize when I picked this up that it was actually a Pulitzer Prize winner. I also didn't realize that this is kind of out of my comfort zone, because it is a World War II historical fiction novel. So that has kind of maybe made me a little less excited about it, and I don't know how much I'm going to enjoy it, but I really hope that I do. I kind of messed up. All right, backtracking. The Goldfinch won for fiction in 2014. All the Light We Cannot See won for fiction in 2015. I'm going to have such a mess when this is over with, I swear. Less by Andrew Sean Greer. This won for fiction in 2018. And I remember when this came out, I actually had it on my most anticipated books wish list. And I can't remember why now. Who says you can't run away from your problems? You are a failed novelist about to turn 50. A wedding invitation arrives in the mail. Your boyfriend of the past 9 years is engaged to someone else. You can't say yes. It would be too awkward. And you can't say no, because it would look like defeat. On your desk are invitations to half-baked literary events around the world. Question: how do you arrange to skip town? Answer: you accept them all. What could possibly go wrong? Thus begins the Around the World in 80 Days Fantasia that will take the novelist Arthur Less to Mexico, Italy, Germany, Morocco, India, and Japan, and put thousands of miles between him and the plight he refuses to face. Welcome to the bestseller embraced by readers everywhere. A love story, a satire of American abroad, a rumination on time and the human heart. Less shows a writer at the peak of his talents, rising the curtain on the shared human comedy. Now I remember. This sounds so good. All right, for poetry, going back to Robert Frost, he won the Pulitzer 4 times. 1924, 1931, 1937, 1943, and he won for New Hampshire, Collected Poems, A Further Range, and A Witness Tree. I don't know about all that, but I do have the collected poems, complete and unabridged, poetry of Robert Frost. So, and then there's also the collected poems of Sylvia Plath. And other than the Bell Jar, this is the other collection that I have of Sylvia Plath. I thought that this was kind of like, this is called Ariel, and this is a collection of her poetry. Okay, now we're going to talk about all the books that I have actually read and my thoughts. So the first one I don't own anymore because I unhauled it after I read it, and that is Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. This won for fiction in 1937. I read this book because it was one of my mom's favorite books, and she just kept talking about how much she loved it. It takes place during, oh my god, there's a term for it, before the Civil War, during the Civil War, and then after the Civil War. I think that's like called antebellum, right? Antebellum's before Civil War? Anyways, this is the story of this spoiled rich girl, Southern Belle. She lives in the South Savannah. Savannah is considered, I think she lives in Savannah. Everything is just about boys and getting married, and she loves to play games. Like, she's a really wicked little twit. You really don't like her at all when you start the book. Then, and she flirts with all the boys. Like, oh my goodness, she really is not making a good impression, because a lot of the other girls talk about her because she doesn't really get along well with the girls, especially if she sees them as competition towards the guy that she likes. She likes to flirt a lot, but there's only one boy that she really likes, and he's the only one that doesn't necessarily give her any attention, not in the way that she likes. So that drives her crazy, and that's literally the only reason why she wants him. So I'm not really used, like, I know that this was kind of a thing, and this concept of like, you only want what you can't have sort of thing, but I'm not actually very familiar with reading stories that feature this. So I'm not saying it's something that I really particularly like. I think that the ultimate thing is really just looking at how she changes as a character. She starts as this very young and hopeful girl that dreams of love, and then the war happens, and they were incredibly rich, and it's just about their life and how they got by during the war and how they made ends meet. And there's this one character who is kind of playing both sides. He's not for the North, he's not for the South, and he is kind of a war profiteer. I won't say exactly what happens, but I will say that while I felt that this book was so long, it wasn't always the book for me, but retrospectively, like, I'm so glad that I read it. I get why it's popular. I get why it won. And I think that especially during its time, because it won in 1937, that, you know, it was probably incredibly relatable during that time. Yeah, I totally get it. And I like that through reading that book, I actually learned more about history within the setting of this story, and learned a little bit more what life was like for people during that time, even for people who, I get it, like, we're slave owners, like, that's obviously because of the time period, that's a big aspect of the story. So with that comes certain vocabulary that our modern ears are not okay with, but taking in context of the time period, yeah, is important. I think that's an important book. So yeah, that was a good one. The next one is The Diary of Anne Frank, or The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank. I'm holding up the book, but it's actually not the book that won the prize. It actually won for drama, which was put on by Albert Hackett and Frances Goodrich in 1956. I don't know how I feel about this. I get that they're taking this story and making it into a dramatization, and so therefore they have profited. They've gotten the notoriety and the prize money for this production, but I don't know, is it just me? It feels kind of weird because it's not their work. So moving on. Then we have The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway, which won for fiction in 1953. I did read this one. It's incredibly small book. I don't have it. I thought I still had it, but I think I got rid of it because it is literally about this fisherman who goes out in search of a swordfish, and that's it. I didn't like this book. I thought it was incredibly boring. I have nothing else to say about this book. It was boring. The next one is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. This one for fiction in 1961. I've talked about this book, I think, several times. At least I'm about to talk about this book again because I'm going to have a video about all my favorite classics where I talk about this book. And this book is incredible. I love this book. This is a favorite classic of mine. It's again a southern. It takes place in southern Alabama. It takes place in a small southern town, I believe it's in Alabama, where in a time where there's still a lot of prejudice against black people, and there are these white people, and there is a crime that happens against this white woman, and she is saying that the quiet Boo Radley is the culprit who violently harmed her. Okay, well, technically the main character is a small girl, and her father is the town attorney. Atticus, that's his name. Atticus is the town attorney, and he has been appointed by the judge to represent Boo Radley. This is a problem for them because the whole town is just in an uproar, and they don't understand the justice system and how important it is to uphold that justice system, that guilty or not, everyone is entitled to their day in court and is also entitled to representation. Even if they cannot afford an attorney themselves, the court will appoint an attorney to represent them fairly so that they aren't taken advantage of. And the entire town is just in an uproar, and they are harassing Atticus and just so angry. And then as we go through, we are investigating this farther as we get closer and closer to the trial date. And then when you find out the truth of what happened, you just want to throat punch somebody. You want to string them up, lynch them like they used to do. This book is so incredible. Here in the United States, this is oftentimes required reading in probably high school for students. I made it through high school without reading it. I didn't read it until actually a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago. And for the first time, probably like 3 years ago, I read this for the first time. It just really touched me. I don't think that I would have connected to it as much if I had read it as a high schooler. And I'm so glad that I read this in my later years. But yeah, this one absolutely deserves a Pulitzer. It was incredible. The next one I read was The Interpreter of Miladies. This is a collection of short stories by Jhumpa Lahiri. I am drawing a blank. I thought it was supposed to be more stories about her culture, and the author's like kind of culture. This one for fiction in 2000, and I actually think that that is actually one of the reasons why I picked this book up, because it was a Pulitzer winner and because I really wanted to read books where I could really learn something about people's culture. And I feel like when I was reading this, I was just incredibly bored, and also I didn't get that feeling like I was learning something new about her culture. I don't know. But I didn't like it. I did not care for this book. I have one other book by Jhumpa Lahiri called Namesake, and I'm hoping that that book goes a lot better. And because of my experience with the other book, I haven't picked up Namesake, and I've been kind of like on the fence because I'm worried I'm not gonna like it. Like, I want to like it. That's why I got it. So I'm hesitant because I don't want to get into something that I'm just gonna feel disappointed by. The last one is a book that I literally just read this month, and that is Olive Kitteridge by Elizabeth Strout. This was fairly disappointing. So this is about Olive Kitteridge, and she is an old school teacher, and she's married to a man named Henry, and she has a child, and this goes through her life and scenes and stories and how she affects people around her and how she's affected by people. And there's an aspect of it that I like, but I just didn't feel that it was very strong. I kind of more or less felt that it scratched the surface on a character study of Olive Kitteridge. I feel like that was the purpose, to kind of take a look at this woman and why is she the way that she is. Maybe I am missing the complete purpose and point of this story, but I didn't think that it really deserved a Pulitzer, because I feel like what this book did, there's a lot of other books that did it so much better, like A Little Life. Even like this cozy mystery called, by Orly Wilson wrote it. It's like a cozy mystery that takes place in a hotel or bed and breakfast. Anyways, you got to know that this woman was just so cranky. Like, she was a Karen. And by the end of it, you understand what had happened throughout her life to make her so angry. And Olive Kitteridge is a bitch. And then sometimes she will do something that's really kind. And you're like, okay, like, you know, maybe we're getting on to something. And then you think, well, maybe it's because she has an unhappy marriage. But then, I don't know. You never get that, like, redemption. She never grows. She just stays this angry, awful person throughout the whole thing. And then I think what made it bad, because, like, okay, maybe nobody does get that redemption. No one does see that clarity and change. That's fine. But we as a reader never really understand what happened in her past to make her such this way, which I feel like is necessary for us to really understand her and at least have empathy for her. And then what was really strange about her character is, like, she's this old woman now towards the end, and she finally has that confrontation with somebody that tells her, look, you have done this your whole life. That's why we don't talk. That's why. Because you made my life miserable then, and I'm an adult now, and I'm not going to put up with it. It's like she had never heard this before in her life, and I feel like that wasn't necessarily realistic. At some point, she probably could have had a conversation like that with her husband, or at some point, people are at least a little bit self-reflective as to why they don't have the relationships that they want to with the people around them, or self-reflective in why they're angry or upset, something. And it was just like, oh, this is the first time she's ever heard that, like, someone didn't like her. I don't know. It really rubbed me the wrong way. I did listen to this on audiobook, and I didn't realize that these were supposed to be short stories, and I took it as one whole book. So it really wasn't clear to me while listening to it that these were definitely short stories, and that some of the stories were meant to be like an outside perspective who have been affected by Olive, and not necessarily, like, you're not always supposed to have the full story. Anyways, more on this in a different video when I do my wrap-up video. So that is Olive Kitteridge. For the purpose of this video, did it deserve a Pulitzer? I think there's other books that took this concept and did it better. So that's a no. That is the end of this video. I think that this concept interests me because of the weight and the importance that we put on books that make it to the bestsellers list or get awards. The implication that these books are supposed to be better than other books because of those awards. And I don't necessarily think that that's true. So I just think that it's an interesting concept. Let me know what you think. Is there a specific award that you love the books that they choose? I think that there might be one for me. Booker Prize books seem to be ones that I tend to really like. And then there's so many other literary awards too. Like there's like a Bram Stoker award, which obviously is like horror books. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed this, and I'll see you soon. Bye.